Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm currently in the process of doing that little series where I'm talking about relationships and stuff on Let's Talk. And I'm due for doing my second video of episode 1, but that's not what this is. So I thought I would just take the time to so my goal for this video is so that mainly women can understand what men go through, and that maybe they can understand the playing field that we deal with at times. So let me start by saying, most women will say that every man in their life has let them down, and they don't realize that men have the same problem. If you're my age and you still don't have a good relationship, every woman has let you down, right? So we're both in the same boat. So I've lost everything in my life more than once, in marriage and divorce. And so I would take a time to make a video. I'm trying to do as quick as I can, run through my life, when I started working, what jobs I had, what I lost, and up to today. So I started working when I was 13 years old. That was as young as you could work when I was growing up, and you had to work for family. So that's what I did. I started punching a time clock when I was 13 years old, and I was working in a grocery store, my grandpa's grocery store. And the way we did things back then was different. I walked to school. When I got done with school, I walked to work. I punched the time clock. I did, what jobs I had to do, which back then I was just stocking shelves and unloading trucks. Eventually I started running registers, and I was sacking groceries and all that stuff. But I mean, looking back from now to then, I started working when I was a child. I mean, I was 13 years old. We got kids nowadays that are 16 and don't even have a driver's license. Can't even ride a bicycle, much less a skateboard or a scooter or something like that. So at the age of 13, I started working, and I had no problem with that. That's how I was raised. We worked on the farm. We cut firewood. If you didn't cut firewood, you didn't have heat. As simple as that. We didn't have air conditioning. You went to bed at night. You opened up, all the windows and turned the attic fan on. That's how we lived, and I was okay with that. It taught me a lot of things in my life. So I have a lot of injuries, a lot of damage, and I still work to this day. I'll be 58 years old this summer, and working is what I know, and I don't mind it. I still work as hard or harder than a lot of the young guys that I work with. So at age 13, I started working, and I worked in a grocery store for my grandpa. And I'm not going to bore you with a whole lot of my work history, but I want you to understand what I go through on a daily. So I worked through there. At one point, I left there and started doing factory work. And I was 18 years old when I started working in the factories. And I don't know the exact date, but sometime between that and before I was like 20, I was in a hunting accident, where I got shot in the foot. I was unloading a rifle. The rifle shell discharged when I was unloading the rifle, and it went through my foot, broke every bone in my foot, and actually blew off one whole section of my foot. So basically, they took and cut a pie shape out of my foot, removed a toe in the section all the way back, as far as they could. And then they had to hammer 6-inch pins in each one of my toes to line up all my bones, because my bones were broken up like chiclets. I mean, there wasn't nothing left. But they did a pretty good job, and I've been on that foot, every day since then. And I wear work boots, and I work. And then sometime after that, I broke my left arm. Both bones all the way through. And doesn't bother me today, but it's another injury. I broke a few fingers here and there, nothing major on that. Um, Later on, I got into extreme sports like skydiving. I used to be a skydiving instructor or an assistant instructor. I worked for a company called Free Falling Unlimited, and I worked 7 days a week teaching skydiving and skydiving. Um, Before that, amateur raced motocross and things like that. So I dislocated my knees a bunch of times in motocross and in a few times in skydiving. Um, I used to rock climb a lot, which I didn't really ever injure myself rock climbing. Later on, after that, I had other than dislocating my knees, I had dislocated a shoulder. I was at work. I fell off a huge rack where I was loading a tanker truck. I used to own a trucking company, and I used to own 5 businesses. We'll talk about that too. But I fell off the truck, and on the way down, I grabbed a bar that's there to protect you if you're on the trailer. But I wasn't actually on the trailer; I was on the loading rack. But I caught that on the way down and pulled my shoulder out. So since then, I've dislocated my right shoulder a couple of times, a couple of years ago, in the same weekend. So my injuries, and then after that, I had a motorcycle wreck. Later on, a stop sign. I broke my ankle all the way through. I broke my left leg and almost tore my whole kneecap out. I broke my left wrist, which still has metal in my wrist. I broke most of the bones in my left hand. I lost my middle finger. I lost the joint in my left thumb, and I lost the tip of my pinky. So that joint is fused. I can't bend it. I can bend it at this joint, but there's no joint there. The finger, the middle finger, the finger was still there after the accident, but he ejected the bone out of my hand. So the bone was never found, and the tip of the pinky was ripped off. So this happened after, the motorcycle wreck happened after my first divorce. My first marriage, my first divorce is where I lost the majority of what I earned my whole life. So from the age of 13, I grew up through life, ended up working in the factory, and then I ultimately left the factory, started doing air conditioning work for a local company, and the gentleman taught me, passed the exam, and he taught me how to do mobile air conditioning work, which is what I do today, is air conditioning work, but not mobile. And from that, I became a contractor, I started working for a contractor, and then later became a subcontractor. And I worked on, a lot of hospitals and stuff, and worked on casinos and heart hospitals and things like that. And that led me to, I was married at the time, and I was married to a woman whose father had a lot of heart issues. And it got to the point where his heart issues, he got down pretty bad and needed some help. So I ended up postponing my life for a little bit and helping him with he was self-employed, and he had a trucking and dirt work type business where he dug ponds, built roads, built houses, dug swimming pools, that type of stuff, machinery. So I helped him for a few years until he could get back on his feet. And then that got me going into the direction of heavy equipment and 18-wheeler type work. So I bought my first 18-wheeler. I did that for a while and had my own business, had my own trucking business for big trucks. And that landed me a contract for a company out of Texas for Little Rock. Long story short, I ended up covering a contract in Texas for the same company. And that one contract turned into 10 years of me living in Texas. So we had houses in Arkansas, and then we ultimately ended up buying a house in Texas. So my family and everything came down there just because the work was good, the pay was good, and it was just the right move for us. One moment. My apologies. I had ordered a pizza and I forgot. So I ended up in Texas with this trucking business. And originally I was living out of my truck. My wife and children were coming down to visit me. I was working 7 days a week, and that got to be problematic. So I had my wife bring a camper down. We set that up, and that got to be where it was not enough room. So then we rented a house. We rented an apartment first, and we had some issues with the owner. So then we rented a house. When we was renting the house, we got robbed by someone who was at the house to do service work, and that really just messed my wife up. And to be honest with you, if you've never been robbed before, it messes your life up, because someone's been in your house. They know, especially if you got children, they know the layout of your house. They know where your children sleep. They've been through your whole house. So since we were renting that house, we had no control over who came and went and did service work on the house. So we decided to buy a house. So we bought a nice big house. We bought a house on the lake, had 30 acres of land. It's 4,000 square foot, had a pool and had a pool house. And it was a dream home. It was everything that you'd ever want. And because we bought that house, it started another business for us, which was a trash business, which is not something that I wanted. I had trucking business, and I hauled hazmat. And then when we moved into that new house, the guy picking up our trash quit picking up our trash. Long story short, he went to jail for illegal dumping, so we were having to take our stuff to the dump. And I just decided that we could get our permits and just pick up everybody on our street. Long story short, that turned into a second business. So now we've got two businesses. I'm married. It's my first marriage. The lady that I married had a 3-year-old daughter when I met her, and we had a daughter while we were married. So we're building this life together. It really was an amazing opportunity for all of us. It was a great life. And I did work 7 days a week, but I don't sleep much. So basically, the original contract that I was covering was at night, and I would work till about 2 a.m, and then I would come home and go to bed. And my wife and children at the time, they would go to bed around 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30. They just require more sleep than I do, and I sleep about 6 hours, and that's it. So it didn't really interfere with our life a whole lot, and we were making some really good money. I was making with that truck about $365,000 a year, and with minimal expenses for the contract that I was covering. Long story short, that ended up with two businesses in that house, and then we ended up starting a third business, which was an on-call service for some of the hazmat tanks that we pulled. They had to be cleaned, and a company that we contracted out with needed someone to clean them, so I gave them a bid for that. So that started us another small business. Now, keep in mind, when you think about a business versus a company, a business is something that you have to be a part of. So if you start a business and you're a part of it every day and it doesn't run without you, then that's really a business. And those can be pretty small. So these are not businesses that are making me millions of dollars or anything, but they are making a huge profit. It's like if you're doing 50% profit in a small business, you're doing really well. And these were doing that. So the trash business was set up for about 50% profit. The tank cleaning business was more than 50%, but not much more. And so at that point, we had three businesses going. And then after that, with the same company, I ended up starting an on-call service for emergency response to these hazmat tanks. So they would get clogged every once in a while. As you hauled the hazmat that we hauled, it would gain weight. And then if you had 48,000 pounds in a tank, you couldn't unload it. But you could heat the unload spigot and melt out the product, and then you could unload it after that. But once we did that, we had to clean it. So then it went to the cleaning side. So we had to have a service for that. And so I quoted a service for an on-call service for emergency response to unload tanks with a 4-hour minimum. And that made good money too. So now we got 4 small businesses going. And one of them was 18-wheelers. And then we had the tank cleaning, and then we had the emergency on call and doing that. Through our business ventures, we bumped into a guy who had a hot shot business, and there was times where he needed us to haul or pick up a load because he had a truck broke down. So long story short, we end up getting phone calls, pretty often. And I just told him one day, hey, if you'll give me one call a month, I'll buy a new truck and a trailer, and it'll be available all the time. He agreed, which we did, and then we started hauling about 3 loads a week for him with a truck and trailer. So now we got a fourth business, which is running a hot shot business. Now, hot shots, I'm not going to go into deep detail of that. Hot shots are designed to do overnight emergency loads, not haul from California to Florida. If you're in hot shot and then you're trying to go California to Florida, you actually need an 18-wheeler. You don't need a hot shot rig. Hot shot rigs are for overnight emergency loads, and we make good money on that and without a lot of overhead. Now, on top of that, my wife, she didn't really, I'm not going to say she didn't work, but she didn't like have a career or anything. And we had plenty of money, and she had plenty of time. I'm like, we didn't even have to balance a checkbook, not really. And so I was trying to get her to do something, even as maybe even be an attorney or whatever she wanted to do. And I don't blame her. I mean, she had a good life. She didn't have to work. I mean, she worked kind of a little bit, really, but not like I was working, And so I don't blame her for not wanting to work like I was. We homeschooled our children. They ended up being super intelligent, and she did really good on that. And there's a lot of things that I respect from my first wife. When we got married, I never had any kids before. I was just young and dumb, and I had knowledge of life. I had no knowledge of married life, and she kind of guided me through that and made me grow up real fast. So she helped with the hot shot business. She helped with the trash business, and we had a good life. She later went to a culinary school in Dallas and learned how to make cakes and things like that. So then we ended up with a teeny tiny bakery on top of the other 4 businesses. And it sounds like a lot, but we managed it well. I mean, we still had plenty of time, believe it or not. I mean, the stuff that we were doing, I was usually off. My schedule changed, and it got to where I was working during the day, and it got to where I was off by 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day. And we went on nice vacations. We would go skiing, and we'd go skiing for 10 days and be up there every day and rent a nice place, or we'd go to the beach or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but we had money to go on vacation. It hurt us when we went on vacation as far as everything we had going on. But it worked out. And then at some point during our marriage and during our life, my wife at the time just got to where it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. Either you work too much, or you work too little, or the 4,000 square foot house wasn't big enough, or it was just on and on and on. And a lot of that mindset is what drove me to do what I did, work as hard as I did, try as hard as I did. Plus, I wanted my family to have everything that they wanted. I'm getting to a point with all this. Before it was over with, my wife was so unhappy with her life. Now, this is a woman that got up when she wanted to get up, and I'm not beating her up for that, but she had a pretty easygoing life. Our children were wonderful. They were very, very self-proficient. They got up in the mornings, they got dressed. We homeschooled them. They basically did that on computer. We bought the best programs you could buy. And we also took them out for activities, and they did, golf. They were on the children's PGA golf tournaments and stuff, and they did, piano and music and sign language and all that stuff. I mean, they had a life outside of home, or a life outside of homeschool. And they also managed their ends of the house very well. Each one had their own kind of end of the house, and bathrooms, and they kept all that clean, and they cooked. I mean, they were very self-sufficient. So it's not like we had a couple of babies in the house that had to be babied all the time. I mean, these were miniature adults. And my wife, my first wife, and she just was constantly unhappy, and there was nothing you could do to make her happy. And it took me a long time to understand happiness in women or unhappiness in women. And through my whole life, what I realize is women are always taught to be happy. And it's a sad thing to teach a woman or any person. No one is supposed to make you happy. There's absolutely no way for a person, husband or wife, to make you happy. They can entertain you temporarily, right? They can do something that's entertaining or loving, caring, and kind, or whatever. But you have to teach people contentment. If you're a wife or a husband or whatever you are, you have to learn contentment to have happiness. I mean, I had a wife who had everything in the world at her fingertips. I mean, she literally did not have to balance a checkbook. If she needed a new computer, she just stopped by Best Buy. She didn't have to call me and ask me or talk to me about it. She stopped by and got it. It didn't matter if it was $1,000 or $2,000. The money was in there. But she felt like it wasn't enough. And she felt like it wasn't enough because she wasn't happy. She wasn't happy because she wasn't content. It wasn't that I was mean or abusive or any of those things, because I wasn't. And through this, she kind of got lost in her own thoughts. And eventually, I won't go into details, but we got a divorce. And both of us lost everything. I mean, we lost everything that we owned in a divorce that shouldn't happen. She was a great lady, great with kids, great with everything. But through that time, things just happened, and she changed and her thought process changed. And I don't hate her for it. I lost everything in my life. And that's why I made this video, because this is what I want people to understand. I started working when I was 13 years old. I worked my whole life to build what we had. And I went from working in the grocery store to we owned 5 small businesses. Some were bigger than others. And we were grossing $500,000 a year and paying taxes on that, and we were netting 350, 360 on a lot of years. But over 300,000 we were netting. That's in our pocket. We had a nice big house. We had a nice big pool. We had good friends. We had 30 acres of land. We had cows and horses and just everything you could want. We had vehicles. We paid cash for a lot of stuff, and it ended up not being enough. But it cost me everything that I worked for my whole life because I could no longer make her happy. So everything that I did from the age of 13 until I went through my divorce from my first wife, which she initiated, and I won't go into the details, but she did things that she shouldn't have done and gave up on the marriage because she wasn't happy. She didn't tell me that. Before it was all over with, she was trying to talk about maybe staying together, but she had done a lot of things that had gone too far. So we ultimately ended up losing everything in Texas. She still lives down there somewhere. We don't talk. I don't hate her. I moved back to Arkansas because that's what I wanted to do anyway. I was never completely satisfied with living in Texas. I was okay with it because we was making a ton of money, but I was working 7 days a week for 10 years. And I was okay with that until she wasn't happy anymore. I couldn't make her happy. So if I couldn't make her happy anymore, what's the point of staying down there? I was away from the rest of my family. I've got a big family that I grew up with, my brothers and stuff. And we didn't get to see them that much. And I got to the point to where I wasn't willing to do it anymore. And I wanted to come back. And that set the divorce in high speed because that's not what she wanted. The long story short, when you look at my life or her life or anybody's life, once you get to my age and you still don't have what you were looking for. When I grew up in a divorced home, and it took me my whole life to understand this one thing about myself. When I dated, I looked not intentionally, but the women who already had children or one child was attractive to me because the one thing I told myself is I would get married one time, I would love my wife forever, and I wanted a family, and I never wanted to get a divorce because that's how I grew up, and that was my intent with her. I didn't knowingly date her because she had a 3-year-old daughter. It was just how it happened. And I raised that little girl from 3 years old to 18 years old, and I loved her just as much as I did my own. We don't, we haven't talked since the divorce. Her mother kind of turned there against me, and I understand that. My daughter and her still talk, for the most part, and a lot of the stuff that we went through, she doesn't even remember. So, but the important thing is when you go into a marriage with a man or with a woman, and you sign a lifelong contract. It's a contract for life. And here's what I didn't understand. All the women that I was looking at had already broke that contract once, right? They'd already been married. They already had a kid, and they had already went through a divorce. So what are my chances are zero at a new contract. Right? There's no way to think that I could go into a new contract for life and survive it with someone who's already breached the contract. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this the way that I am is because I want women to understand that that's what men go through, and I want men to understand that that's the risk. So we got so many women who will sign a lifelong contract that the government controls. With the men you mentioned, the prenup, they don't even want to talk to you. You're pretty worthless at that point. Now, the reality of it is if you're a male and or a female, a prenuptial agreement is what you should be focusing on. But quit thinking about it as a prenuptial agreement. You're still looking at a lifelong contract. Now, the lifelong contract that most women want to sign is controlled by the government, but that can be changed at any point. At any point, they could change that and it not go in your favor. It's already changing and not necessarily in your favor as much if you're a female. But why not sit down with the man that's going to be your husband or the woman that's going to be your wife and talk about a lifelong contract that you can agree to? So, for an example, I'll use myself for an example. If that was what we had done, the prenup would not have to mean that she would lose everything. The prenup would not have to mean that we both lost everything, which is what we did. We lost our house. We had $200,000 worth of equity in the house. We lost that. We lost our cows, our horses. We lost our vehicles. We lost everything that we owned in a divorce battle that took 2 years for me to get divorced. I got 21 divorce decrees from her, which means I got served 21 times in 2 years, which required a response from an attorney when I could afford it. So that's the kind of battle that I went through because I signed a lifelong contract with a woman who had no intent of fulfilling the contract. She might have had intent in the beginning, but she didn't go through with it. And I wasn't a bad person. I'm not a bad person today. I don't even know a man really that's a bad person, but everybody I know has been through a divorce and their wife left them. Either they put them through school and when they graduated they left, or whatever. The kids grew up, they left, whatever. It doesn't matter. Women file for divorce when they're not happy. Now, everybody plays a part in this, and you'll always hear me say that. The reason why women chase happiness is because that's what we taught them. We taught them through people raising them for happiness. We taught them through trying to make them happy when we dated them, always trying to bow down and keep them happy because that's what we want. We want them to love us because that's the most important thing to us, is them to love us and accept us. And so we'll do anything for that. But you cannot maintain that your whole life. You cannot wake up every day and, oh, my wife's not happy. I need to do something to make her happy today. Even if you were the richest man in the world, eventually you're not going to be able to make her happy, because teaching her or her learning that through society or whatever, the end result is you're not always going to make that person happy. But that person can always be content. And in that contentment, you'll find happiness. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up. I've been married 3 times. I'm on my 3rd marriage. None of them have been good. My 2nd one lasted 6 months. I won't go into the details of that because it really don't matter. She was my childhood sweetheart. We almost got married right out of high school, and some things happened that we didn't get married, and we did end up getting married later in life, and that just happened to end up being a mistake. So sometimes things happen for a reason. I got remarried again. This marriage is no better. There's people out there that say, hey, there's a common denominator, and there is a common denominator. The common denominator is I pick women who have children because I want a family, and like it or not, statistics have proven that that's the single worst decision a man can make, is marrying a woman who has children and has been through a divorce. They make bad decisions, but those bad decisions are because of how they're taught and raised and what they've been through. So I'm not beating up women. I'm just saying, statistically, you marry a woman who has children and has been through a divorce. If she left her first husband, the father of her children, that's the one person that a woman would try harder than anybody with. You don't really stand a chance. So that can change, and that's what my channel is about, is changing that mindset. But I wanted to briefly talk about myself, and so people could understand not only what you could go through, but what you could risk. And if you sit down and do the prenup with your wife or husband, you can make a decision. Let's just say you do own a business. Let's say you do own a business. You currently own a business. You meet a woman, and you're going to go and you're going to get married and sign a lifelong contract. Instead of her getting 50% of that, you could change that number. Instead of her getting the whole house, you can change that. You can say, hey, you can have the house. I'll make the payment on it for X amount of years until you get on your feet, if we both agree that we're going to go through a divorce or whatever. But if you don't do some kind of contract where both of you don't have skin in the game, then who's going to try? Why would a woman have to try if she can sign a contract, lifelong contract that the government has prescribed that allows her to have everything, and you have nothing? Why is she going to try in that aspect? She don't have to. So if she don't have to try, she's not going to try. She's just going to sit around and demand that you make her happy, and when you don't, she'll leave. How many of y'all know a woman or see a woman who's talking about going through a divorce from a great man, a man that was great? She admits it. Great man, great father, great cook, cooks all the time, does all stuff. He still make me happy no more. So I'm going to leave him. Go see if I can find somebody else that can make me happy all the time. What kind of insane thought process is that? I'm just going to wake up and be happy in the morning. I'm going to go to my job, and if my job don't make me happy, I'll just quit. My husband can handle it. He can get it. He loves his job. He's happy at his job. He's happy at his job because he's content with his job. His job don't make him happy. He's happy because he's content. And you have to be content to be happy. So I should have already released video 2 of episode 1. I know that. I haven't done it because those videos are going to, at some point, get up into my feelings, I feel. And, because I have to go through a lot of stuff. I went through a lot. The purpose of me talking to you about all the damage that I've got in my body is I still work. I could easily take disability, but I don't do that. I work and I work and I work and I work. That's what I do. I don't live to work. I work to live. And that's how you should do. Don't let setbacks and things like that stop you from living your life. My life's not perfect. My marriage ain't perfect. It's far from it. It's not even really technically a marriage at this point. We don't live a married life. And most of the men I know that are married, no. Most of the men that I know that are married, they're having, I'm going to say, sex 3 or 4 times a year. What's the point? First of all, you're not making love anymore. That's how men receive love. That's how they feel loved. When a man is making love to his wife, he can tell when he's making love to her, if she loves him or if she's just having sex with him. And there's a huge difference. And that's how men validate that. It's not that men only think about sex, which is what women think. But if men are not validated through making love to their wife or their girlfriend, however, whatever stage relationship you're in, if it's not validated in that process of making love to their woman, then they're going to want it again. They want to validate. They want to know that when you're making love, that you love them. That's how we get plugged in. That's how we know. Everybody's different. Women are different than men, but that's how men know. When you make love to a man and you love that man and you give yourself to that man and you support that man, there's nothing that man won't do for you. He'll go from being 13 years old working in a grocery store to owning 5 businesses and you not having to work anymore. He'll do that. But eventually, if you don't continue to love that man and support that man, and if you think that he's supposed to make you happy all the time, you can lose it all for no reason. My first wife's not living no great life. She's not living the life that she was. She's not going to come out and go, well, I made a mistake. She's not ever going to say that. I don't care whether she does or not. I don't even hate her for it. I appreciate the things in life that I learned with her and through her experiences. And then I'm content with my life. I've rebuilt my life. It's taken me a long time, 15 years. And I'm still not anywhere near where I was. But I'm content with my life. And I live a good life. It's not perfect, but I live a good life. And y'all should live a good life too. But you got to learn to be content with your life. Stop chasing happiness. Be content with what you have. I've got an old van out here. It's almost paid for. I love it. It's one of my favorite trucks. Favorite vehicles I ever have. It's a Mercedes van. I've got a bed in it, a shower in it, and a toilet in it. And I can drive it anywhere I want to go. And I can pull over and take a nap. I can go camping. I can go on mud ride. I can do whatever. And it's paid for. Would I like to have a brand new truck? Sure would. I'd love to go get me a brand new truck today. Can I afford one? Yep, I sure can. But it doesn't make sense to me to spend that kind of money on something that I don't drive. I've got a company truck. I put about 12,000 miles on this van in 5 years. I can't justify buying a new vehicle, but I'm content with the one that I have. It's just fine. And it's a big old white Mercedes van, and people make fun of me and say I'm an ice cream man or whatever. I don't care. I'll pull up and go to sleep while they're getting a DWI. I couldn't give a shit less. You know what I mean? And you shouldn't give a shit less either. Be content with what you have. If your man works hard, if your wife works hard, if your man, comes home and cooks, if your wife takes care of the kids and cooks and helps you do whatever, and y'all help each other out, be content with that. Understand that your happiness comes from that. Don't waste a life away over stupid things. And if you're a female right now and you have the mindset of my husband needs to make me happy, or he don't make enough money, or whatever it may be, you can fix what's broke. You can fix everything in your life that's broke with contentment. Being content with what you have. You can walk up to your husband and say, you know what? I really don't think I've been looking at this from the right angle. And I just want you to know that I love you, and I'm gonna work to change my life and our life. You're more than enough. Thank you for who you are. I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything to support you. And I love you. And I'll always be here. You can't even imagine how far that would go. And if you learn to be content, you won't chase happiness. You will be happy in contentment. I'm going to wrap this video up. It's probably gone 39 minutes. Okay. Further than I wanted to go. And but I appreciate y'all stopping by. I hope y'all watch this video, and I hope that I can get to the point to where I can reach some people. We've got a lot to talk about in the series of videos that I want to do. Some of that stuff's not going to be that much fun, but the reality of it is if we don't fix what's broke, no one's going to fix it for us, and we're just going to constantly go through life being divided. Like I said in my first video, men love women and women love men. They do that. They'll admit it. But you can find someone that hates every man on this earth, and you can find someone that hates every woman on this earth. Does that mean they're bad people? For the most part, no, it don't. For the most part, it does not mean they're bad people. I'm not saying there's not bad people out there, because I know they are. I know people that's been through more than they should have ever been through, and they're never going to recover from that. They could, but it's not easy when you've been through too much. Now, and when I say too much, I'm talking about abuse from someone who constantly beats you up and tells you to kill yourself and you're a worthless piece of crap. That's what I'm talking about. You know, someone who's molesting and raping, those kind of things. I'm not talking about just somebody that's not making you happy. That's not what I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap this video up, and hopefully here pretty soon I'll get video 2 out of the first episode on my channel. If y'all have made it this far, I mean, you're probably got a lot of patience. But if you did make it this far, I appreciate you sticking around, and let's get through some of the stuff, and let's have some happier days and have some fun videos. Summer's about to kick off. We're about to pull our boats out. We're about to de-winterize them. We're going to be going to the lake every weekend. I'll try to post some videos of that. Those will be a lot more fun. Everybody just out hanging out the lake, having a good time, getting some sun. You know, what's wrong with that? Y'all have a good one. Thanks for stopping by.